Hello, I am David Flynn, and to discuss the moral evaluation on Kantian Deontology, I have chosen the topic of committing adultery. This presentation examines how Immanuel Kant's three formulations of the categorical imperative apply to the moral scenario of adultery. Kantian ethics is a deontological theory, meaning that morality is grounded in duty rather than consequences. According to Matthews and Hendricks, 2019, Kant argues that moral obligations arise from rational principles that apply universally to all persons. The categorical imperative is the supreme moral principle that determines whether an action is morally permissible. So here are the points that I've just spoken about. Deontological moral theory, which I've already discussed. How morality is grounded in duty and reason, and what the categorical imperative means as a central principle. This has been referred from Matthews and Hendricks, 2019. Now there are three formulations of this ontology. First is the formulation of universal law. Second, I would be discussing formula of humanity. Third, formula of kingdom of ends, and the reference is Matthews and Hendricks, 2019. So let's discuss the moral scenario. Now, a lot of times we mistake adultery as having sex, which is not under marriage, but actually it basically means that having sex or engaging in sexual encounters with people out of marriage is the real definition of adultery. So therefore, we discuss violation of specifically marital commitment. And to do so, obviously, this will require some amount of deception and promises will be broken. Therefore, we discuss this in the realm of morality, and therefore we actually try to observe this whole scenario through the Kantian lens. So let's discuss the first formulation. The first formulation is the formula of universal law. It instructs us to act only according to maxims that we could will to become universal laws. In evaluating adultery, we must first identify the maxim behind the action. A possible maxim might be, when it benefits me emotionally or physically, I may break the marital promise or engage in a secret relationship. As a Christian, one of the commandments is we should not engage in temptation or let temptation mar us in the realm of morality. The question is whether this maxim could be universalized without contradiction. So if everyone adopted this principle, the institution of marriage would lose its meaning. Marriage relies on mutual promises of exclusivity and trust. If breaking those promises whenever convenient became universal practice, the very concept of marital commitment would collapse. This creates what Kant calls a contradiction of conception. The action cannot be consistently universalized because it undermines the institution that makes the action possible. Therefore, under the first formulation, adultery is morally impermissible, and as per the references taken from Matthews and Hendricks, 2019. The second formulation is the formula of humanity. It states that we must treat humanity, whether in ourselves or others, always as an end and never merely as a means. This principle emphasizes human dignity and rational agency. When someone commits adultery, deception is typically involved. The unknowing spouse is denied the information necessary to make autonomous decisions about their relationship. In this way, the spouse is treated merely as a means to personal satisfaction rather than as an autonomous person deserving of honesty and respect. The McCombs School of Business, 2018, explains that deontology focuses on respecting persons as rational beings. Adultery violates this respect by manipulating another person's trust. It reduces the spouse to an instrument for emotional security or social stability while pursuing hidden desires elsewhere. Because Kant insists that persons possess intrinsic worth, the institutionalization is morally wrong. The third formulation is the formula of kingdom of ends. This formulation asks us to imagine ourselves as members of a moral community governed by rational laws that we collectively endorse. In such a community, individuals act according to principles that could be accepted by all rational agents. If we consider adultery within this framework, we must ask whether rational lawmakers would endorse a rule permitting marital deception. Allowing adultery would undermine the trust necessary for social cooperation. Marriage is not merely a private arrangement. It is a social institution embedded in a broader moral order. A community of rational agents would recognize the permitting deception in intimate commitments weakens the moral fabric that sustains trust. Therefore, within the kingdom of ends, adultery would be rejected as incompatible with the shared rational legislation of moral agents, as per Matthews and Hendricks, 2019. It is helpful to contrast Kant's framework with the Golden Rule, which instructs individuals to treat others as they would like to be treated. Maharik, 2018, argues that the Golden Rule can produce paradoxes between individuals may have subjective preferences that differ from others. For example, a person would forgive infidelity might wrongly assume that others would as well. Kant's categorical imperative avoids this problem by grounding morality in universal rational consistency rather than rational preferences, personal preferences. Across all three formulations, adultery fails the Kantian test. It cannot be universalized without contradiction. It treats persons merely as means, and it cannot be justified within a rational moral community. Kantian ethics therefore condemns adultery not because of its consequences alone, but because it violates duty, dignity, and rational moral law. In conclusion, Kant's categorical imperative provides a rigorous framework for evaluating moral actions. Through the formula of universal law, we see that adultery undermines the institution it depends upon. Through the formula of humanity, we recognize that it disrespects the autonomy and intrinsic worth of persons. Through the kingdom of ends, we understand that it cannot be endorsed by a community of rational lawmakers. Together, these formulations demonstrate that adultery is morally impermissible within Kantian deontology. Here are the citation references that I have utilized. Thank you.